My name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. Today's a little bit different. Our format is going to be a little very varied from usual. What we decided to do, Paige and I spoke earlier, is Paige will speak for 15 minutes or thereabouts, 15 or so, and then I'll speak for the same amount. And then we'll go back to Paige for 5 minutes and then back to me for 5 minutes. And then we'll open it up to the floor for 2-minute shares. So that's the format we're going to try and follow for today, and we'll see how that turns out. Um, by somewhere in the blur of COVID to now, I remember going to a meeting. I think it was I forget whose meeting it was in UK, and there was this little redhead sitting in the corner. It was always very quiet, never really said very much. And then all of a sudden, she's doing her own workshop on Monday and is turned into this fireball. And that is how I came to know Paige. And she is an extraordinary individual. I'm glad she agreed to join us here. So I'm going to turn it right over to her and not waste any more time. So I give you, for the first segment, our friend Paige, and she's going to read. We're on page 48. We are technically at paragraph 1, but we're going to go through paragraph 1 and 2. The paragraph that begins with "the reader may still ask." Paige, take it away.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. And the reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. And I love where we're kicking it off today, because this is a perfect example of the book meeting me where we're at. See, when this book was written and it was published, it was meant to solely go out and carry this message. There might be times where I might be a sole alcoholic alone in the world and not even have a sponsor or a home group or the privilege of coming to meetings like this with people from around the world. And I got to follow this book and follow its direction so that I'm able to recover. And you'll notice that the book, it's real nice to us. You know what I mean? It's saying like, hey, you might be at this point saying, okay, why should I believe in a God? You know? Anyone here ever have any of those moments of like, okay, yeah, I'm miserable and you seem to be happy, but give me one more good reason, you know, where I'm fighting the process and I'm resistant. And so the book is going to meet us where we're at, and it's going to take us where we need to go. And I won't pull too much from the previous paragraph, but I want to point out what we're trying to do is we're trying to smash my delusion. We're trying to smash my rigidity to just open up my mind so I'm able to lay aside my old ideas, my preconceived notions, and just be open to the first part of step 2, which is maybe there could be a power greater than myself. And in the previous paragraph, it's saying, well, I mean, faced with alcoholic destruction, maybe you could have a bit of an open mind. Your way has not worked. Let's try something new. And often I find if I have done a sufficient job of conceding to my innermost self the step 1, it's real easy for me to grab a hold of step 2. If I am utterly convinced that I am absolutely hopeless and that I will relapse far sooner than I think I will, like a relapse for somebody like me is imminent, man, that is driving me to look for a solution. Now, I don't have to be jazzercised about the solution. I can be a little like, it's not my fave, but at least there is one. I mean, alcoholics, we're the only people that'll be like complaining about the color of the life preserver. I wanted yellow and this is a red. And like, clearly that's too matchy for somebody like me. You know what I mean? Actually, yellow would go terrible with my skin tone. Maybe I do want the red. You know, I'll fight it, right? But the book is meeting us where we're at. So why should I believe? And one of the things I want to point out, it says capital P, power greater than himself. Yeah, red, pew pew. Also, if you're like, Paige, I don't like the direction this is going, you put things in the chat, I'll go in another one. I just go all over the place. Tangents. But I want to point out capital P, power. And almost any place in this book I see a word that's capitalized, that becomes a word that can be a synonym for God. Or if you don't like the word God, that's cool. You can use the word power instead. What we're pointing to is the exact same stuff. That power which I need, that thing that I need to build that relationship with. Here's why I should believe in it. And I love, now I read it real appropriately because I'm an invited guest, but every time I get to that second paragraph, I just want to read it like I'm in the 1940s and I've got a mid-Atlantic accent, you know what I mean? Where it's like, the practical individual of today, see, is a stickler for facts and results. See, you know, I kind of want to do it in that way. And what are we talking about? As human beings, especially in that time where science was progressing at an alarming and incredible rate, what were people believing in? Facts and results. And keep in mind, we agnostic, it's approaching our prejudices. We agnostics is coming and meeting us where we're at. What am I railing against? Well, this whole God idea, it's not factual and it's not reasonable and it's not logical, it's not scientific. So the book is meeting me right where I'm at with my arguments, right where I'm at with my resistance. And when I come to rooms like this with people like you, one of the things that I cannot absolutely deny is the power that has worked in your life. I see that you are happy and sober at the same time, which that didn't happen for me. You know what I mean? I could have one or the other. I can't have both. You know what I'm saying? And I see that it's available for you. And what we're turned, and again, I got no permission to do this, so I'm going to shenanigan a little bit. You don't have to have me back. It's totally fair. Let's pop over to two employers, the most logical place that you'd go if you're talking about this power greater than yourself, the only chapter that doesn't talk about God. Let's go to two employers. Let's go to page 144. And I'm going to start right at the top of the page. Solve his problem, right? And you know, that's half of the sentence, but that's what I'm after. I'm after a solution. And step 2 is just about me being willing to believe that there could be a solution. I don't need to like it. I don't need to understand it. I just need to be open. There could be a solution. To you, some of the ideas which it contains are novel. So it's talking about this book and probably referencing the chapter I just bounced us around on, right? Ugh, this power great. You want this drunk to believe in God? I don't know. Or a power greater than themselves? Perhaps you are not quite in sympathy with the approach we suggest. By no means do we offer it as the last word on the subject. But so far as we are concerned, it has worked with us. After all, are you not looking for results rather than methods? And that's the idea that we're pointing at. Are we not a stickler for facts and results? Is it much more important that we in Alcoholics Anonymous have a solution? We got a whole chapter. It's called There Is a Solution. We got one. But is it not more important that I have a solution, that there is an answer, that there's a way to get from the hopelessness of step 1 to the spiritual awakening that's promised in step 12, that I've got these 12 steps to take me from the hopelessness to the spiritual awakening, to the hope. I don't have to like it. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to think it's the best thing ever, but I just need to believe that maybe, just maybe, I'm not so special, that the miracle that has worked in your life could not work in mine. Do you know what I'm saying? I just need to believe that what has happened for you could happen for me. And what do we offer in Alcoholics Anonymous? We offer permanent, contented sobriety. That's what we offer. Now, there's an asterisk. There's always a fine print. It's contingent on the actions that I take today to grow and maintain that spiritual condition. But that's what we have. And if you want that, man, let's go do it. Like, we've got a solution. So that's the thing, is I don't have to like AA. I don't have to like God or a power greater than myself. I don't have to like the steps. I can think we agnostics is stupid. I can be very annoyed that I'm still talking and hope that I'll wrap it up there soon. But I cannot deny that there is a change that has happened. Stickler for facts and results. The fact is that for those of us who follow these directions as laid out in this book, we recover. There is a solution. Now it talks about Nevertheless, back on page 48, sorry, sometimes I bounce back and I forget to tell people I've bounced back, and you guys be like, where are we at? I know I didn't finish that paragraph. It was talking about the hopelessness of alcoholism. That's okay, back to 48. Thank you, Rob. Rob's used to my shenanigans. He's very good at putting the numbers in the chat. Back to 48. It says, nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. That theory, that belief that there could be a power greater than myself. Now, I don't need to fully know it, fully comprehend it, fully understand it. For us at step 2, it's just a theory. It's just the grasping the touch of belief. But we have lots of beliefs and we have lots of theories about a lot of things. And what we're starting to get into is we're meeting the argument of it is not scientific, it is not logical, and it is not reasonable. So what we're doing is we're using science and logic and reason to attack our argument of why we shouldn't be open to this idea of God, which is science, logic, and reason. And so it says we have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Now, here's what's interesting about electricity. I don't know exactly when electricity was invented, but in Bill Wilson's lifetime, he would have gone from not having electricity in his home to having electricity, to being able to access that electricity. Now, Bill Wilson, I mean, he was a smart guy, so I wouldn't put it past him, but he probably does not have the intricacies of electricity. He has probably not studied the atoms and the molecules and I don't know what else is in electricity. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, it's above my pay grade. I don't really have a pay grade. All my life is an avocation. That's a very specific AA joke. But he doesn't need to understand electricity. What he needs to do is utilize that power. So he was in the darkness and now he begins to be in the light, which is such a beautiful metaphor. And I love the metaphor of God as light, because light is not what I see. Light is the way in which we see. Now it says, we have these theories about, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Now keep in mind, if we like rub like a balloon on our head, I'm now referencing like grade 1 science experiments, but I can see static electricity and I can see lightning. But by and large, I don't see electricity. Do you know what I mean? Often what I see is the result of electricity, which is to say, I don't see God. That's not true. If you invite God, you go looking for God. God's everywhere. You'll see God. It'll be a fun little exercise if you want to do that. But that idea, I don't see God. Well, that's okay. We don't see electricity. We see the results therein. Just like I would see the results of God, of this power working in my life. And it says, why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. The reasonable assumption is that if I turn on that light switch, the light will come on. If I plug in my phone, the phone will charge. If I turn on my computer, the computer will load. If I connect to Wi-Fi, the router's on, it will work. I need to believe that it exists. I don't need to understand it. I can be like, I was gonna say Wi-Fi is stupid. That was a very aggressive take. Light bulbs are lame. There are people with some outside issues that might feel like that. But like, you know what I mean? That idea, I don't need to like it. I don't need to understand it, but I do need to utilize that. No worries, we're glad you're here. I need to utilize that power. And so if I'm here today and I'm struggling with, but I can't see God, you don't need to see God yet. You don't need to understand God yet. But if we can just believe that there could be a power, and you don't have to call it God. I'm calling it God because I feel like I got like 2 minutes left. I didn't do a great job of checking the time. But you don't have to call it God. But what do we need to do? We need, and we will grow to see it. It's okay if we don't see this power yet, but we begin to feel that power. You see, the step 5 promises, it talks about how we begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We begin to direct that power. What does that look like? It looks like me getting my butt out of the way and letting God flow through me. You know, the St. Francis prayer, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. Get me out of the way. Let God flow through me. often in the 9th step prayers, and we see these prayers later on in the later chapters, man, God, show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. I can't pull those out of my butt. You know what I mean? I got to get me out of the way. That is God's patience, kindness, tolerance, and love. And it's got to flow through. I got to direct that power. You know, when you don't say that thing that you always say, you know, when you don't flip off the guy in traffic, you know, when you're able to show up in a way that you've never showed up before, I need to direct this power. You know, when that obsession is removed, I need to direct this power and I'm using this, I'm utilizing this. This relationship on which I am building becomes the foundation for my life. The foundation is not 1, 2, 3. The foundation is all 12 steps. And I'm using this to be the way in which I live my life. And you know what's going to happen is the result. I'm just starting with like, okay, maybe electricity could perhaps be a thing. But from there, I'm going to grow into having all these devices by which I live my life. Which is maybe not the best metaphor, because you might be like, girl, get off your phone. But spiritual devices, that this is going to build a relationship. But I have to start with a relationship is possible. And that's what we're looking to do. Man, I wasn't going to use this metaphor. Oftentimes I talk about it like building a relationship. So it's a little like step 2. So bear with me. I'm so sorry. It's a little like going on spiritual Tinder. You know what I mean? I know. Bear with me. And all I'm doing is just believing that a relationship could exist. From there, what I'm going to do in step 3 is I'm going to make a decision to build that relationship. And through consistent action, I'm going to communicate. I'm going to listen. I'm going to clear away the stuff between me and that power. And we're going to spend this time together. And you know what happens? I build a relationship. And for any of you guys that are married, you guys are going to know it is not based on time. You spend a lot of time not talking to each other, not listening to each other, with stuff that's between you. You're not going to feel very connected, but with consistency. And the consistency will be the actions of these 12 steps. And from there we grow. I think that's about 15. I didn't do the best job at checking the time when I started, so I'll turn it off to you.
Got another 3 minutes or so. You can continue another 3 minutes at least. Go ahead.
Oh, shenanigans. That's amazing. Sorry, I didn't plan for that. I was like, okay, I think we started at 3 minutes. Oh, I'm so here for that. Sorry, now it'll just be me. I'm amazed for 3 minutes that I went up early. You know what I mean? And so when we look at this, we're going to then transition into these other, repetition. Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll go back to that metaphor because the chat took me there. Thank you. But that idea of like, if, like, you know, when you first, bear with me, you know, when you first start going on dates, keep in mind, alcoholics, we don't date. Really? How do you know the joke? How do you know an alcoholic's on his second date? He's got his 2 bags of stuff, 2 garbage bags full of stuff in the driveway, ready to love you, you know, the color of your eyes match the color of the grippy socks. You know what I'm saying? It's true love, right? So we don't really date, but bear with me. For those of us who might have dated, at first, what is it? It's awkward and it's uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Just kind of like when we first kind of start to pray, it feels awkward and uncomfortable. And I feel like I'm talking to a wall, and, you know, you do things together, you start feeling a little self-conscious, just kind of like, you know, when you first do the 4th step and maybe you don't have somebody that's taking you through, necessarily hand-holding you through the process, and you're like, am I doing it right? You know what I mean? You start overthinking it, right? And meditation. Oh, I can't meditate. You know what I mean? I can't do that. Like, it just feels overwhelming, but not with time. See, imagine you go on a first date with a guy, and then you go on a second date 10 years later, you're not feeling more connected after 10 years, right? But with that consistency, what do? We build that relationship. Consistency with prayer, consistency with meditation, that's spending that time together, that listening, consistency with allowing myself to clear away the stuff that's blocking me, consistency with inventory, consistency with amends, because man, I can't feel connected to you if I know I owe you an amends. I can't feel connected with God if I got that on my heart. So I begin to clear that away, and with consistency. So for those of you who are married, fingers crossed that this is your experience, your spouse is that person that you would turn to for love and comfort and support. When something bad happens, they're the person you want to say, man, let me tell you what happened today. When something good happens, they're like, let me tell you what happened today. You want to ideally spend time with them. You know what I mean? And that is what we will do with this capital P power, that at this point, I don't know, I don't have to like, I don't have to understand, I don't have to comprehend, but I just need to believe that people like Howard or people like Paige, well, the Howard more so than Paige, have better things to do. You can believe he's got like things to do. I've got better things to do. So that's kind of a big ask. It's probably easier to believe in the power of the universe and that there's a God than it is to be like, Paige can have hobbies. But what we need to do is just believe that they're not lying about their experience. You know, those of us who have recovered, that we've got, again, maybe not me, other people have better things to do than to lie about their experience. And that if I do the things that they do, lay aside my old ideas, lay aside my old preconceived notions, lay aside that, oh no, there's none of that newfangled electricity. It's lanterns for me or nothing, you know, it's candles or, you know, suck it. It's really aggressive. But sometimes that's what it is when we're fighting about the idea of God. We just got to believe and then build action from there. So thank you for letting me talk about that.
Thank you, Paige. That was great. How the hell am I supposed to follow that? This is a daunting task. My name is Howard Ebert. I am an alcoholic, first of all. It's quite a daunting task. Is following Paige is one thing, but I look around me and I'm surrounded by big book gurus. I'm surrounded by big book people, and I feel at home, but I also feel somehow inadequate. You know, it's to measure up to all of these people, whatever the expectations are. I could never do that. But thank you all for coming. Paige, thank you for agreeing to be part of this. This was Kathy's idea, incidentally. Thank God she did that. Let's talk about the reading. We have two small paragraphs that summarize so much. You know, let me just start with the chapter that we're in, We Agnostics. When I first came here, I thought, well, it kind of applied to me. I thought I was an agnostic, but I've come to believe that we agnostics is Bill saying, all of us, we are all agnostics. We are agnostics. And if you're not sure about that, consider this. You know that God has relieved you of the obsession to use and to drink, because he has. You know that God has been there for you in so many ways, but he has shown himself on a daily basis. I love to, at night, I ask my people to do this, and I do it before I put my head on the pillow at night. I ask myself, where did I see God today? So you know that God has shown up. But if you want to find your current agnosticism, find that area of unmanageability in your life today. The truth of your agnosticism is going to lie right there. They're not disconnected. Any area that you may have doubt, any area that you may feel, I need to jump in. Maybe it's somebody's health. I need to pray to God to take care of that person, to ease that person's pain, or to provide for that person, or that this person gets good grades in school. Whatever it is that I'm asking for that has a result, I'm playing God. That's my agnosticism coming out. That's my area of doubt. And it's healthy. And it's a good thing. Doubt is healthy. But don't ever think it doesn't apply to every one of us. We are all on one level or another agnostic. And I am by no means an expert on the Bible, kind of the other guy's club in a way. But I understand that Jesus another good Jewish boy, incidentally, I should mention. He had a trade. He was a good carpenter, I understand. He learned the trade. He had something to fall back on. Jewish parents are always great with that. You got to have something to fall back on. So if the preaching doesn't work, you could make cabinets. In any case, as I understand it, he told his disciples that they are only to have and to carry with them the clothes on their back, that God will provide everything else. Now, who among us would be able to do something like that? You know, who doubts who's going to provide for my food? Who's going to provide for my change of clothes? Who's going to provide whatever? That's normal, and that's our agnosticism. So if I accept that, I know that he's talking about me. But for myself, we read something on the previous page that changed my life. The line that said that we start at a simpler level, to me said that all the people who told me I got to have faith in order to get this thing were wrong. Because from the moment I came in, people said, you got to have faith, you got to have faith, you got to have faith. Well, I had none. So what do you got for me? I don't have faith. Well, page 47 tells me I don't have to. Page 47 tells me it begins at a simpler level. And that simpler level is belief. And belief is hope. You see, all I had when I came here was hope. I didn't believe. I had hope. You told me that belief equals hope, that faith is confidence. And I don't have confidence when I get here. I have hope. And based on that hope, I'm able to make the decision I have to make in the next chapter to employ a plan of action that produces results. And the result, I no longer believe. I know. I have faith. So when I read it, it starts at a simpler level. It really helped me. It really did. And it also tells me in this book where to look for this power, because my experience with God was not good. My mom died when I was 14, and it was explained to me that God needed her very much. Now, I didn't have a real great feeling for that old man after that point, because how could he need him more than me or my 9-year-old brother? It didn't really make me feel warm and fuzzy about the old man. So if you're asking me to turn everything over to that power, I have doubts. So it begins with my starting out by making a list of traits that I would believe that power to have, if there were that power. And then the book tells me where to look for that power. I'm sorry, how to look for the power first. Laying aside prejudice, the things I think I know, be willing to believe some of the things I could see and hear, and seek. Honestly, earnestly seek. Take action. Hang on a second, I gotta set my own clock. I forgot to do that. Okay. And it tells me where to look. It tells me how to find that power. It tells me where to look. On page 55, it tells me deep down inside every one of us. And one of the things it poses on the page or so before we were at, there's a line that says, but where and how will we define this power? Now, I like to add something, but where, how, and when were we supposed to find this power? Where are we going to find it? Deep down in every one of us. How are we going to find it? Lay aside prejudice, be willing, and seek. When are we going to find it? Page 55. In the final analysis, that's where I'll find God. After I've eliminated everything else, every self-help method, every vitamin method, every physical therapy method, all of the other things, belief in light bulbs, belief in just the fellowship. Once I eliminate all of that noise, in the final analysis is where I'm going to find God. And I don't have to look for God. I have to let him out, because he's deep down in every one of us. And what I have to do is clear away the clutter that's accumulated on my soul so God can get out. I don't have to find him out there. I don't have to let him in. The book tells me that God is innate. I'm born with that power. And all I have to do is clear away the crap that stands in that power's way of getting out. And this helps me so much. What we just read, this line that we have to have a reasonable assumption as a starting point, right? What's my reasonable assumption? My reasonable assumption, I arrived at on the previous page where I'm asked one short question. Do I now believe or am I willing to believe? There's my reasonable assumption. I'm willing to believe that there is this power out there somewhere, somehow, whatever the hell it is. I'm willing to believe that. Now I have my reasonable assumption and I could start my approach to that power. You know, the book tells me when I tell my story that I'm supposed to tell about how I approached and conceived and established a relationship with this power. Well, I do it through the process of the steps, but it begins with a reasonable assumption that there is this power. You know, the paragraph that we just read, you know, Paige mentioned, it starts off with being a stickler for facts. I love that. You know, we alcoholics are real deep thinkers. We need all of the facts and all of the data because we have to make educated decisions and we need all the information to do that. We don't do things instinctively. We do things based on evidence and fact and detail. So we're really sticklers for facts. But in any case, this point about numerous theories, like about electricity, I got one that's better than electricity. You could talk to you blue in the face about how this thing works, but I will never understand it. I could type something in here, hit send, and it comes out somewhere. If I'm sending it to my friend in Ireland, by the blink of an eye, the second I hit click, it arrives on his machine. How does that happen? How does it go through these airwaves and not bump into your text to somebody else? How does it not bump into all of the Netflix things that are hanging around out here? How does it not bump into HBO? How does it not bump into the radio waves out here? You can't explain to me how that works, but I know it does. I have evidence that it works. I know that God works in my life because I have evidence that that works. So I have a reasonable starting point, which is that there is this power, and now I can begin the process to approach that power. And we're about to read other things about outward appearances are not inward reality at all. We just read about outward appearances in more about alcoholism. We read about somebody who to all appearances was normal, yet he was an alcoholic. This other one, to everyone around him, he was a normal guy, but yet he's an alcoholic, he's a nervous disposition. So we can't always judge by this. We can't go by that. Outward appearances, you're going to tell me that this hunk of steel, this girder of steel, is actually all these tiny little electrons whirling and swirling and bumping. How is it they don't fall out? Can you explain that to me? How is it that it doesn't drop a couple of electrons as it's whirling and swirling about? I don't know. I just have a reasonable assumption that it doesn't do that, that it somehow forms this solid mass, because that's what I'm told. I see it. I have evidence. And that's what we're talking about here, is believing in the evidence. We may not have visual proof, but we believe in the evidence. I don't have visual proof of God, yet I have visual evidence of God every day. And I have to always remember that that's my starting point. That's my ending point, is that there is this power. And we read in the previous paragraph about becoming willing. You know, how do I get willing to believe in that power? What is it that makes me willing? Every one of us has a circumstance that made us willing to do what it is we do in this book. Bill mentions, you know, none of us liked doing this shit, and there is a solution. He tells us none of us like this stuff, so we do it. Why do we do it? How did I get willing? Well, alcohol finally beat me into a state of willingness. And you know what? There's a line that says, in this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. I don't think so. Alcoholism is a great persuader, because alcohol is in a bottle. Alcoholism is in here. And it's that persuades every one of us to get to this point. It's not the chemical in the bottle that'll lead us to it. But in the end, it's our ism that makes us say, okay, I'm ready to do this. I've celebrated 10-year anniversaries 3 times in recovery. When I came back from my last relapse in 2006, I was beat. I was convinced that there was no solution available to me and that suicide was a viable option. And that scared me to death. That was my great persuader, that my ism, my spiritual malady had convinced me that that's a good idea, that makes sense. Alcohol may have led to it, but that's the thought that made me willing. That was my persuader. That was my circumstance. And like I said, every one of us here should be able to point to some circumstance. Yep, that's it. That's the moment at which I said, I can't. Direct me. Tell me what to do, and I will do it. There's no more air in this balloon. There's no more wind in these sails. I have completely deflated that ego. I'm now willing to take direction and do what I'm being told to do. So I don't want to keep going on over and over on this. I'd really like to hear more from Paige. So let's go back for a few minutes for Paige and then myself, and then we'll open it up to you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And, you know, as you were talking about we agnostics and the word agnostic, listen, I got here and I thought I was too cool for this whole God thing. Keep in mind, I'm a piss in my pants behind the dumpster sort of alcoholic, but I'm too cool for God. But as you're talking about it, I was thinking about the etymological origins of the word agnostic. We change in AA. We grow and change. And the truth is not that much, because I was never cool, like if you guys are wondering. But the word agnostic in its etymological origin, it's Greek. Ag means without, and gnosis meaning knowledge, but it's not that good old alcoholic. Yeah, I know. You know, the one that we give our sponsors all the time. Yeah, I know. We've heard it from our sponsees 1,000 times. Yeah, I know. It's like, no, you don't. That's why I'm telling you it. You know what I mean? It is not that head level knowing. The word Gnostic is referencing that heart level experiential knowing. You see, if you have heard of texts that are referred to as the Gnostic texts, it's that heart level experiential knowing, not an intellectual. I can pass the AA exam. And so all of us, when we come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I might have faith, I might have belief, I might have religion or doctrines. I might come with a lot of education and training, not me, but some of us might. But I don't have that experiential knowing of God, that relational knowing of God. And the gentleman who gave us knowledge of what our solution is in Alcoholics Anonymous, he's a homie. I call him a homie. I'm sure he would not want to be called a homie, but Carl Jung. And Carl Jung had there's this our solution is a spiritual awakening. And there's this famous BBC interview where they interview Carl Jung. And in that interview, they ask him, growing up, did you believe in God? And he said, yeah, I believed in God. And he says, do you believe in God now? And he says, no. And there's a pause. And he says, I've got no need for belief. There's another pause. And he says, I know. And that's the knowing that we're after. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to go on a second etymological tangent to be followed promptly by a third, because I'm so fun. But in step 11, what do we seek to do? We seek to improve our conscious contact. The word conscious, its etymological origins, it's Latin. Con meaning with, and chess or sire means knowing. So at step 2, I'm not meant to have that knowing. I'm just believing there could be, just maybe. But as the result of the 12 steps, I go from the without knowing to the with knowing of God. Power, creator, spirit of the universe. That is what's happening. And that's what this process is. And as you were talking about your cell phone, I mean, what I want to do as an alcoholic is I want to fight you on it. I want to be like, no, explain to me how this thing works first. You explain it to me and I need to understand it. And it's like, no, Just use it. Just use it. And I'm a weird human being. I really enjoy the text Varieties of Religious Experience by William James, because I'm fun at parties. And in it, he talks about the ineffable quality of a spiritual awakening. Ineffable is to be almost indescribable. And so if you were like me when we get to we agnostics, it's like, what the heck? We're going to steal girder? What does that have to do with anything? Electricity? Who the F cares? I don't know any of these words. It's stupid. I don't get it. What are we talking about? But for those of us who have worked these steps and have had the spiritual awakening and continue to grow it, you know that it is experiential. It is not intellectual. It is not what I know in here. It is what I experience as the result of the 12 steps. So to speak about God, we often have to use things like metaphor. Because how do you explain something that is unexplainable? How do you describe something that is not describable? How do you describe something that can only be experienced? And again, step 2, I'm not knowing it. I'm not experiencing it. I'm not utilizing it. I'm not swiping on my phone. I am just believing that it exists. And that is all that is asked of me. And I think that's about 5. I think I got 2 left, but close enough. Over to you.
Thank you, Paige. I'm going to wrap it up real quickly. The reasonable assumption and the starting point is what we read today. And the previous page, it tells me that these words, God, prayer, meditation, they're really defined by you. We're not going to define it for you. So if you're new here and you're hearing all of these words, it's not Howard's version. It's not Paige's version. It's your version. And I know that because the book on that previous page tells me that it begins by examination of my beliefs, asking myself, what do these things mean to me? Not what I've been taught, not what I've been told, not what I've seen on TV. What does the word God mean to me? What does prayer and meditation mean to me? And once I define those things, I could then make my list of traits and I could then begin my approach. I have a starting point, but I have to begin with that real starting point is an examination of what my beliefs are. Put aside the shit that has been put into my head. When I was a kid, I had to go to Hebrew school every day after regular school from the age of 9 to 14, from 3:30 to 5:30 every day. I had to go to Hebrew school for religious training. You think I got a chip on my shoulder? That's what I'm talking about. Putting aside all of that stuff that was crammed down our throat. And that's our starting point. So I'm going to wrap it up by rereading what we always finish up here. I'll read this, and then we're going to open it up to the rest of the room. The reader may still ask, and we're on page 48, first full paragraph. The reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let's have a look at some of them. The practical individual today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they're firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of a doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it's impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Thank you all for coming. Paige, thank you for doing this. I'm going to turn